If we're seeing Ethereum approved as an ETF, I think it's very likely that we could start to see other digital assets approved as well. Things like Solana, things potentially like Binance in the future.
The crypto markets are rallying hard. Why? Why is this happening? Number one, Donald Trump.
Bitcoin's value has risen since the failed assassination attempt of Trump on Saturday. Trump's recent crypto stance has really picked up momentum in the last few months.
I think with what occurred with Trump over this last weekend is actually maybe going to accelerate the process of digital assets and more allocations to Bitcoin. And we're seeing that right now.
Donald Trump and his pro-crypto VP pick.
He has selected a pro-crypto VP candidate for the race, JD Vance. We know from the disclosures that JD Vance holds Bitcoin as one of his assets as part of his portfolio.
2022, Vance disclosed that he held between $100,001 to $250,000 of Bitcoin on Coinbase.
Smash the like button, guys. More people need to know about this. To be honest, his VP pick seems very pro-crypto. He loves crypto and he hates bad crypto regulation. What more could we ask for? Listen here. Listen to what he says about Gary Gensler.
There's a candidate for worst person, in my view, at least in terms of my substantive disagreements. I'm sure he's like a nice guy, is Gary Gensler. Okay, so Gary Gensler is sort of the complete opposite of my view. And there are two problems that I have with Gary. One of which is that I think he wants to inject politics way too much into the actual business of securities in the United States of America. But in some ways, the more fundamental issue, or at least the most relevant issue for this particular conference is the approach that Gary has taken to regulating blockchain and crypto seems to be almost the exact opposite of what it should be. The question the SEC seems to ask in regulating crypto is this a token with utility? And if it's a token with utility, then they seem to want to ban it. And if it's a token without utility, they don't seem to care. I almost think we should be the opposite here, right? I worry about financialization. I worry about, frankly, whether a lot of the crypto stuff is fundamentally fake. But if a token actually has utility, that's the sort of thing that, by all means, regulate it. By all means, be careful about, how consumers interact with it. But you don't want to just get rid of this stuff. And here's where I really, really worry about this is a lot of the newest challengers to the social media incumbents of 2024 are going to require some blockchain technology to make their business work. Maybe they'll require a token that supports verification. There are all of these ways in which the companies, when I talk to sort of friends who are still in the VC industry, the companies that are most exciting to them, they're doing actual things in communications in the 21st century, in 2024, I should say, those companies very often rely on high utility tokens to do things like verification. Well, if we're not making it possible to do verification, then we're going to make it really hard to challenge the existing incumbents in the space.
Not to mention, after the failed assassination attempt, one of the very first things Trump did was confirm that he'd still headline the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. Use code Altcoin Daily for 10% off tickets.
Trump will be speaking next week at the Bitcoin conference. And so it's very exciting to see that his team has actually confirmed this and that he will be there presenting to a very large audience of diehard Bitcoiners from around the world.
Reason number two why crypto is pumping so hard. The spot Ethereum ETFs are days away from full approval and launch. Mark your calendars. Brian Dixon, CEO of Off-Chain Capital, perfectly articulate what comes next regarding the spot Ethereum ETFs and what this means for the industry. Listen closely or get left behind.
What would a potential approval do to the price of Ether and other cryptocurrencies in the near term and the longer term?
Well, if we look what happened with Bitcoin when the ETF was passed in February of this year, we saw a tremendous inflow of new capital into the asset. And so if history repeats itself, and we see this with the Ethereum ETFs, if they are indeed passed next week, I would anticipate we're going to see an increase in inflows to the Ethereum ETFs, which would likely drive price. Now, what I'm excited about here is that the Ethereum ETF is now one more digital asset that will have a regulated on-ramp for retail and institutional investors to get exposure to the asset in the United States. And so this will create an easier on-ramp. It'll remove friction from getting exposure to the asset. So in time, I believe this will drive price. And it's also a positive step in the right direction for additional ETFs with new digital assets in the future to be approved.
So the Bitcoin ETFs changed everything everything, i.e. opened the doors for the Ethereum ETFs. The Ethereum ETFs then changed everything, opening the doors for the altcoin ETFs. This is all happening so fast. What altcoin ETF do you think comes next?
I think the launch of the Bitcoin ETFs changed crypto sentiment in that it's now becoming much more formalized with the traditional financial system, because as a retail or institutional investor, you can log into your traditional brokerage account on Fidelity or Interactive Brokers or wherever you trade stocks and securities at, and you can now acquire Bitcoin via this ETF. And in terms of it creating more adoption to the larger digital asset network, I think this is very, very positive, because as Ethereum gets approved, one of the arguments for quite some time is Ethereum a security or a commodity? And if we're seeing Ethereum approved as an ETF, I think it's very likely that we could start to see other digital assets approved as well. Things like Solana, things potentially like Binance in the future. It really opens the door in terms of what the digital asset space can do in launching these products to the general public and to larger institutions in a regulated fashion. And I believe what that's going to do long term is just enhance the adoption rate of the whole market.
Yeah, Solana ETF seems most likely to come next. And I think that the market is looking towards this. And this is the number 3 reason why crypto is pumping.
Historically, they've been very restrictive in approving these types of products. But what we saw with the Ethereum ETF is a complete 180-degree shift, because it looks like the SEC rather proactively reached back out to the filers of these products and wanted them to complete accelerated approval process documentation so that they could actually get these products live. I mean, that was a big difference from the Bitcoin ETFs, which took Grayscale over 10 years to get their product approved, and they ultimately had to pursue litigation against the SEC and have the courts decide to have the SEC re-review this product so it could go live in the markets, and then they approved all the Bitcoin ETFs. Now, how the SEC did that 180 on Ethereum, if that's the direction they continue to head, I would likely see a lot of these products hopefully get approved sooner than later.
And by the way, just to cap everything off, the largest buyers of Bitcoin ETFs and all ETFs are still to come. Second half of this year, next year. Do you realize how this works? I'm so bullish. Brian Dixon explains.
I think we'll see much larger allocations towards the tail end of this year, early next year with the Bitcoin ETFs. The reasoning for that, like I've noted before, is that the largest investors in the world have very long due diligence timelines. So the sovereign wealth funds, the pension plans, the endowments, these groups can take 12 to 18 months to complete their due diligence timelines, pass through their investment committees, educate their clients before they can ultimately make large allocations. And I think that's what we're still waiting on. I think with what occurred with Trump over this last weekend is actually maybe going to accelerate the process of digital assets and more allocations to Bitcoin. And we're seeing that right now with the inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs. I would expect the same thing to happen in regard to the Ethereum ETFs. I think once those will launch, we'll see an inflow initially. We'll see a big bump of allocations happening. And then for the larger institutional investors, that's going to probably take 12 to 18 months to go through their diligence timelines again before we could potentially see some larger allocations from those groups of investors.
My name is Aaron. So much is happening in crypto. If you're interested in making money and staying informed on a daily basis on everything going on in crypto, subscribe to our channel, join our team. See you tomorrow, my friends.